welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
This is Jessica with Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am here with an author who wrote a book called Jackal, which I want to call it a lot of things. I think horror is definitely a big part, genre part of this book, but there's so much more within it. So I'm just actually going to invite the author to tell us about Jackal and about herself and where the book came from.
Hi, my name is Erin E. Adams. Thank you so much for having me on. This is all very exciting. So Jackal is a horror thriller. It is about a young Black woman named Liz who returns to her hometown in the Rust Belt for her best friend's wedding. She hasn't come back home for many, many years for many, many reasons, and mostly because it doesn't really feel like home to her. So she goes to this wedding. At the ceremony of her best friend's wedding, her best friend's daughter is taken. And as the search for this child begins, our protagonist, Liz, realized that she's seen something like this before when she was in high school. And as she starts to dig through the history of her town, she finds a series of missing and murdered children, and they are all Black and they are all girls. And so as she's working to put the pieces together, she has to figure out what's going on before it's too late. So that's what Jackal is about. Where it came from. Woo! Okay. So I grew up in the Rust Belt. If you can't guess. I grew up in the Rust Belt. I grew up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and actually it's where I chose to set my book because Johnstown, among other things, has a fascinating history. The Johnstown flood obviously took place in Johnstown. It was, for years, the largest natural disaster in American history. It is partially what founded the peacetime Red Cross, and it's a major historical event. And so growing up there, it's a predominantly white town. And so it's something where I always felt like something was just a little bit off or a little bit strange, and I could never really put my finger on it. And then when I moved away and I came back one time when I revisited, it was around the ever so infamous 2016, and I was like, oh, it's racism. But not to be so flippant, but it's easy to be flippant with things that are difficult. And yeah, coming back, suddenly there were just there still are when I go home, just like a lot of Trump signs all over the place, a lot of really, really large American flags. And it's something that initially, I had my own judgments. And then as I started just digging into and really talking to people from town who I'd grown up with, people who my mother knows really well, I was like, there is something so much more complicated going on here. And it's not this kind of, I feel people, especially people in New England where I'm currently living, are like, oh, well, it's just backwards, whatever. I'm like, it's so much more than that. It's in some ways a really, really slice of American life that I felt wasn't being accurately represented. And so, of course, I threw some magic in there. That kind of unease feeling I felt like was the perfect setting for horror. And then when it comes to mystery, beyond the fact that I love mysteries, I think the best thing about mysteries is, as a writer, you get to take the world apart and put it back together again, and you get to see it a little bit differently. So that's also why the mystery genre was chosen.
It was very interesting, and that's why I said, it definitely has elements of horror in it, but there's layers. And, I think this is kind of where the horror genre sort of gets disrespected, because I feel like that all good horror has layers. Otherwise, it's just you're just watching people get tortured. Which is a genre of horror, so whatever, if that's your thing. But for me, what really grabs me about the genre, as I love it, is just the layers and how you really can take a magnifying glass to things like, oh, I know why my hometown felt off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's put this into a super, let's blow this up and put it into a supernatural psychological thriller horror situation. That's ways that we can sort of kind of go through our emotions, and also for people who are might not have experienced that because they grew up in a predominantly white place where they were white and they were not, a minority in the community, or, felt like they maybe were somehow on the outside and couldn't figure out why. It's like a knock to the head, like, oh, right, that, but I really thought that this book was so good, and I really liked Liz. She's so complicated and she's so interesting. And you mentioned 2016, and one of the things I actually wanted to ask, because when I was reading this book, these disappearances happen a lot, and the Liz's best friend is white, Melissa, and they have a daughter, Caroline. She's marrying her a black man. They have been together for a very long time, and he's the father of her daughter, and they love each other. But Caroline goes missing, and it sort of falls back to all of these young black girls around Caroline's age who went missing, and it's always around the same time. And I know this does come up at some point. It's around the summer solstice. So like at first, because this story takes place in what, 2017?
Yes, it is 20 the summer of 2017.
Okay, so part of me at first was wondering, is this like a sacrifice post-election years? I was looking, I'm like, okay, Liz, is that like post-Reagan? Like, how is this working exactly? But I was way off, so that's fine. I'm not actually spoiling anything. It was just just because you said that earlier, and it like came up in my mind. But that is not a spoiler. Although yes, these disappearances do take place around summer solstice, and people, the question as to whether or not that it does come up. It's not really a spoiler. So that is part of the story. But I loved Liz. I like homecoming stories, and I especially like homecoming horror stories. And I liked Liz going back and sort of going through, these moms who've lost their daughters and putting the pieces together in a way that like she didn't realize, like things she didn't really realize that these things were happening when she was a kid.
Yeah, there are quite a few red herrings in the book, and there's quite a lot like floating around in the air.
I hope that wasn't too much of a spoiler.
Oh no, not at all.
I had to throw it in because I have it in my notes because it just made me laugh. That was where my brain was going.
Oh yeah, no, not a spoiler at all. I always think it's so interesting, the stuff that's just kind of like floating around in the air of the book, or things that are like, it's like you have to be specific. So it's like, well, when do you want to set it? What year? And I'm like, yeah, 2017 feels all right. Yeah, no, she comes home, and I just wanted that to replicate some of that unease, that uneasy feeling. And that over the course of the book, with the mothers, with her best friend Melissa, with everyone, she begins to we start off establishing what those relationships are, and then instantly they start to change, and she's reassessing, and she's looking at them with new eyes, and they're examining her with new eyes, and then the situation is just like pulling up these things that she has not examined in those relationships before. And I think that that mirrored for some people something that happened during the election cycle. And it really is like, I think we use the word, we were like looking at marketing words and stuff. We use the word reckoning a lot, where it's like she's going to have to face a whole bunch of stuff in herself, in others, in her friendships, in her relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It was really just, her relationship with her mother, and like
Mm-hmm.
how her mother related to the town also,
Mm-hmm.
um was really just well written. And I really just liked, in general, Liz and Melissa, when you look back on their friendship and you look at how different people saw their friendship. She she had Keisha, was the girl who was in her age group who disappeared when she was younger, another young black girl, who they were not friends.
Mm-hmm.
And Keisha and Liz had like this, different relationship where, Keisha was always like, Liz, why can't you just be more
Yeah, like why can't
not like
you?
you?
Yes, basically. It's like you are. Liz has the painful childhood of being awkward. But yeah, no, thank you. I think a lot of time. No, I know a lot of times when I'm writing, I either like writing things that I haven't seen enough of, or I like writing things that I'm like, okay, I went through that, and I feel like there's just I don't see it anywhere. So I'm gonna put it in here and just see what happens. And I just really wanted to speak to a bit of like it's like, I feel like there's one set of there's a narrative and an experience where if you're one of like only a handful of Black people, everyone kind of sticks together and becomes really tight knit, really close. I feel like we see that a lot. And I'm like, what happens when the opposite happens? When you feel this kind of unspoken competition of like there can only be one, and what happens when that like both of you desperately need each other, but you both of you desperately like want to assert yourselves as like, there's only spot for one person and I'm going to get it. And I really wanted to explore that. I wanted to explore, or I wanted to like revisit friendships between like especially Black women and white women, and like what comes in with age and everything to start to complicate that. And especially a childhood friendship, we like to, I feel like when we're childhood friends, we like to revert back to how we were as children. And like as we see Liz and Mel trying and failing to do that over and over again, it's like, okay, what's changed here, what's going on?
I also liked just some of the local characters. Man, everybody freaking knows a Lauren. I'm sorry if people are Laurens who are reading or the book or listening to this podcast. But am I really that sorry? I don't know. Lauren's really annoying, but it's so funny. Like this, the characters were just so well drawn, and everybody knows that older guy who everyone crushed on, who got,
Mm-hmm.
who somehow got the alcohol for everybody. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
knows the person who was up in everybody's business. So it
Mm-hmm.
really just was like, I mean, aside from, okay, so you have like this legend of a master and a shadow, which it comes up. It's a reoccurring thread through the story, and it does lead you through red herrings and also the answers to the story. You have that, which I feel like, I mean, here where I am on Long Island, we have our local legends, but they're a little different. It's like
Yeah.
but I did spend some time down in like Delaware and the Maryland area, and their local legends are a little bit different, because I think they are a lot closer to rural
Mm-hmm.
areas or towns that are they were affected by just the changes and
Mm-hmm.
industry changes. So I really liked that. It was really cool, but the story in general was just like this. awesome tapestry. And so Chris was another character. Um,
Yes.
so tell us a little bit about Chris and
Talk about Chris.
yeah, why Chris?
Yeah.
Why is he here?
Why is he here? Oh yeah, no, he's here for many reasons. So Chris is Liz's like high school crush. And he was someone, again, he's that older guy. He's like always kind of hanging around the high school kids. And it's like completely unrequited. Like all the, it's when, when you're what I think like 14, have all the feelings and like none of the gumption to do anything about it. Um, and he's there because he's there because a part of Liz coming home is that she's had a failed engagement, and we find out, the reasons why as we go into the story. And part of telling a story, especially one like this, is kind of what we've kind of been like landing on here and there. It's about the relationships that your main character has, and all the different things those relationships start to offer them and what choices they make because of them. And so Chris is there to kind of offer this, I don't know, like a certain level of reassessing how she deals with men. And because he's her first crush, he's both like, oh, okay, I'm reassessing. Liz is like, I'm reassessing how I deal with men. And with the first man that she felt so strongly about. So it's another thing where he starts off with this kind of, shiny crush veneer. And then as we go on, that starts to fall away. And she's really being like, okay, who is this person? Who was he then? And who is he now? So that is really what Chris is about. A lot of characters, since, they showed up in her childhood and they're coming back again in her adulthood, we have those opportunities to track, who were they to her as a child and who are they to her now as an adult, and like have those roles changed. Like something, as some people who seemed great in childhood are not so great in adulthood. Some people who were awful in childhood are actually pretty competent adults getting things done. So
Except for Lauren.
Except for Lauren. Listen, Lauren, let me tell you, there are 3 characters who every revision, they walked off with the novel. They are Marie, Liz's mother. Oh my God, everyone loves Liz's mom. I love Liz's mom. She's great.
I really loved her too. She really was sort of like that. She almost was like a silent pillar holding things up until Liz came back and like you really started interacting with her and you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like there's something else going on there. Yeah, so it's Marie, Lauren. Lauren, I think we're all dancing around the thing of Lauren. Lauren is a delight. She is a gossip. She's that lady who's gonna notice like your hair changed, or you gained a little bit of weight, or you lost weight, or it's like, oh, you have a tattoo there. What's that from? She's just this very direct, forward woman who like deals in secrets. She just likes to know secrets. And those characters are always so much fun. So of course Lauren walked off with it one time. And then the other character who walks off with it sometimes is the medical examiner's wife, Kirsten. Oh, Kirsten. It was really hard. I'm like, Kirsten, you gotta go back to your role now, honey. You can't take over this whole thing.
That's interesting. I would not have thought Kirsten was one of them. Oh man, oh wow.
Yeah, she likes to just show up, and I'm like, no.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I can see her as being that person. So, when did you start writing? Are you, have you been in another career, or have you just been like wanting to just start writing for a while?
So I started writing. My first degree is in playwriting. I got my first degree in playwriting from Brown University. And then I promptly was like, that's cool. I want to go be an actor. And so I acted professionally. I'm still acting professionally on and off. But I did that pretty solidly for about a decade. So 10 years. And I went to grad school for acting. I worked, for a long time. And I about like 2018, I started feeling just a little unsatisfied with the career. And I'm like, I think I need to find like, not that I ever wanted to leave acting, but that I wanted to find something else, like a parallel creative outlet. So I started writing again for the first time since college, and I wrote a bunch of short stories or short plays. And then when it came to writing Jackal, Jackal started like late 2018, and just like in just little bits here and there. Like I got a couple of ideas for the folklore. I got an idea of my main antagonist, and then I got the idea for Liz. And then once those things were in place, then I really started writing. But when it comes to like writing as a career, I never considered it growing up because it felt like way too lofty. Somehow acting seemed more tangible, which makes absolutely no sense. But that's how my brain was thinking. And then, yeah, I started turning more to writing in 2018. And then, 2019, I really I was like, okay, I'm just going to try this. Like, I'm going to really, really try this and just see what happens, because acting was, becoming pretty like, I'm like, okay, I know the audition season. I know what to expect. I know what this cycle is. And I'm like, let me just actually just like do it. And near the end of 2019, I think I applied to like I was like, okay, I'm going to apply to a bunch of dramatic writing opportunities, a bunch of playwriting opportunities. I'm going to really start to buckle down on this book, which was initially a novella, and then it got very, very big. And I was in a place with everything, with day job wise, with audition season wise, that I was like, I can really turn hard for about 3 months. And so that's what I did. And gradually, some of the fruits of that hard turn started to come back, and then that would grant me more time to write. And so then I just kind of became this ever feeding cycle. And then the pandemic happened. And suddenly everything I thought I was doing was just like, I remember I had a play reading that was supposed to be in person, and we had to put the whole thing on Zoom in like 3 days. And that's back when we didn't even know what Zoom was. And I'm like, how do I use this platform? People can't talk at the same time. What is this? What is lag? And just really, and then like, but after like those first couple little, like, I feel like Zoom readings, a lot of the industry that I was working in just stopped. Everything stopped. And then when I finally came out of my like, oh my God, this is the end of the world panic, my writing group, which used to only meet like every 3 months, we started to meet every week on Zoom. And so I started just like churning out pages of this book, and I kept coming back to this book in a really like invigorated way. And the bulk of draft one like happened in the 3 months in the summer of 2020. And then things just like, they say work begets work begets work begets work. It's like things just started going on from there until right now. I think I can finally say this now. I can say this for right now. That might change. I'm a full-time writer. Yeah, which is a very
awesome,
very strange thing to say. But yeah, thank you. It's for now. Who knows what'll happen? But right now, that's what I do for all of my income.
So first of all, that's awesome. I feel like horror had just this really wonderful moment, and thrillers too, in the pandemic. Everybody is kind of it's so funny. One of my coworkers who does podcasts with us, she's a co-host, Evelyn, is like, if I said to her yesterday, Evelyn, if it wasn't for you, pretty much almost all of our episodes would just be about like these books where horrible things happen, because I am a huge fan of horror and thrillers. Jen, who's another co-host of ours, is as well, although she'll go the historical fiction route or something a little bit less, with less claws. But for me, as soon as this one came across my desk, I was like, "Yep, we're doing this. This is especially since 2020. This is 100% my book."
Yeah.
What have you been reading in general? Like, what do you like to read?
I like to read everything. I like to read very widely. I just finished The Woman Could Fly by Megan Giddings. That's been my commuting read. And that was just, I just, first of all, I just love Megan Giddings. Like, her books are like, they're layered and complicated and just like kind of like make my brain go a bit tingly. And she also uses a lot of horror and speculative fiction. Um, I've been on a bit of a horror binge myself. I also before that I finished The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. Just adore Paul Tremblay, period. Like, I think I read A Head Full of Ghosts back in, oh goodness, it must have been like 2017, 2018. I think it came out in 2016 or something. And I read that and I was like, what else is there? Give me all the books. And like properly grabbed, like added all to cart. But I also like reading, I just like reading everything. What's the other one? It was a big book a few years ago, but I finally got around to reading it. Was Leave the World Behind by Ramon Alam. That was, I was like, I didn't know I needed that book, and yet
Yeah,
there
that
it
book
was.
was that's the one with the Airbnb.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that book was really, really good. That book and oh my gosh, there was another book that came out around the same time called When No One's Watching by Alyssa
Yes, by
Cole.
Alyssa Cole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
by Alyssa Cole, which like it's so funny. Like those books are almost like if you pair them, it's almost like a fine wine, and like wine
Yes.
is like they're different, but there's threads of similarity, and you can sit down and enjoy one, and the other one is a good a good companion, but also a
Mm-hmm.
palate cleanser. So yeah, no, that's a great book.
Yes.
Leave the World
Yes.
Behind.
Yes. I'm trying to of course, it's like when someone asks you what's your favorite movie and your brain, everything falls out of your
Oh,
brain.
totally. Everybody
Um,
asks librarians, can you recommend a book? And we're just like, I like books. We
yeah,
have them here.
I feel like I'm like sticking because we're talking about horror. My brain's like, oh, I can pull these ones. What are like something outside of that genre? Like, I love a good rom-com. Like I love high fantasy. I'm finally on I'm going to butcher the name. I need to look it up one second. Quickest thing. Oh, where is it? No. Yes, I started the Dark Star trilogy, Black Leopard, Red Wolf. I'm a huge fan of like any sort of fantasy. Um, I read The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. She's just so good. I
Chef's
there's some.
Kiss.
Yeah,
That was a cool one. Yeah.
yeah. But I like to just kind of like, pick around and move around. I think it's because like as a kid, I, grew up going to libraries. Like I remember that was like, I think our Saturday activity at my dad's house and my mom's house, that we would go to the library and remember just like walking through the stacks and just like grabbing like whatever I thought was really cool. And I still remember I brought some a few times in a few things I've done, but it was impressionable that when I first arrived at the library, I was only allowed to check out 5 books at a time. And I was like, excuse me, I need more. And after a few weeks of me, I would bring the books back. The librarian's like, okay, as long as you read them, you can get 7 books. And so I was like the one kid who could get 7 books, and I felt so special. And probably looking back, I probably was not the only child doing it, but I feel like they're like, please don't lose these child. But so because of that, I feel like I don't really stick to one section. I kind of like wander
Right.
around. It's kind of why I really like, I love a bookstore because
Me
I know
too.
it's like I just get to walk around and look at things and read the back of books and talk to booksellers. And then I have a dog. If you've seen me, I've been like wrangling her during this so she doesn't try to get on my lap. And we just like go to the store and like, look, I'm still someone. I feel like I'm still somebody who like, I like to like touch things and look at them before I engage.
100%. So we only have a few minutes left. Are you working on another book at the moment?
Yes, I am very deep in revisions for my second book. My second book has a horror angle, but we're going the more domestic horror route, like the calls are coming from inside the house, so to speak. It's following two first-generation Haitian sisters and them unraveling a mystery that's taking place in their family. So that's going to deal a lot with sibling dynamics, if you can't guess, and a lot with what it means to be first generation, what it means to be. And when I say that, I mean like someone whose parents were born in another country and then they came here and had you. So you're the first generation that's born here in the States, and you become like, which is something I identify as. My mother is Haitian from Haiti. I'm the first child that she had here, and it's a weird growing up experience where you're translating things for your parents, and not just like language things. You're translating like American culture things for your parents, and trying to, navigate that, and like, growing up, like, how do you explain as a teenager that it's like normal for people to have sleepovers and you're like, or like what prom is and why I should totally go. And so just like that experience is just so disorienting. And the kind of like, where does the horror element come in? I think something that I find fascinating, especially as an adult, I'm a woman in my 30s, and like growing up, I'm like, oh, there's a person, there's a person that my parents were before they had me. Like there was someone totally different in some cases before I came along. And I feel like, especially for the children of immigrants, they can be someone totally like, and like, Grandma lived in a whole nother country. She spoke a whole nother language. She had a whole nother culture before I came along. And so it's not horror as in something that's, negative, so to speak. It's more just like, just different and shocking, and looking at our parents as people. But the sibling dynamic is still what is foremost in the front. I'm talking about it now because that's what I'm working on in revisions the most right now.
Well, this was awesome. I can't wait to read it. And please come back sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all the nice things you said about my book. Thank you. Thank you for reading.
Thank you. So this is Jessica. Our guest was
Erin E. Adams.
And we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.